thanks for coming back. That's hope you enjoyed your coffee, and I had some good discussions already. I'm sure you did as well. Just to let you know, in the room, we have 75 people online who stayed with us, so that's quite cool. So now we're on to like, we had a preview of kind of data science content before the break. Now we're going to kind of get into a little bit more of the meat with some pitch presentations about various data science projects that we're helping to support across the university. So we'll line everybody up, and a lot of data science in a row. And our first speaker is Joanna.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna Strycharz, and I'm an assistant professor of persuasive communication here at the university. And as you already have heard, AI plays quite a big role nowadays in advertising, and that's actually what I am studying. So in my research, I focus on what is the impact of what we call computational algorithmic advertising on individuals who are exposed to that, as well as on the society in general. And what I want to talk specifically shortly to you about is the notion of digital vulnerabilities, which we see as a new type of vulnerabilities in the society, and targeting that companies use. You probably have all heard about the Facebook scandal a few days ago. That's basically something that taps directly into that. So I think you all know the notion of vulnerability, right? We have some kind of vulnerable groups in mind when we think about vulnerable individuals. The elderly needing certain protection or help, the children not being able to deal with a certain information. But what we see happening conceptually a lot in, for example, the legal field or more in the ethical field is actually that vulnerability nowadays, because of the amount of data being available of individuals, is not such a clear thing like this is the elderly of the children, but it's something that's dependent on circumstances. And the digital world can actually create circumstances that can make every and single each of us vulnerable. So a bit more theoretically, this is an overview we have created in a study thinking, so what can be vulnerability in this digital age? And we thought about, so what can make us vulnerable to, in my specific research, persuasion? And we have things like internal circumstances about you as an individual, like personal characteristics, that is the elderly, all the people with low literacy, but also the state you are in, which can be nowadays identified for inferences, right? Is someone in a dangerous situation? Is someone stressed? Is someone in a certain life situation that's most difficult? And then you have external things that, of course, can also be identified through data traces. Does someone have a limited access to, for example, a mobile phone because of a low battery? Can that make them more vulnerable to certain messages? Or is that person in a certain environment that makes them vulnerable? For example, what's going on around you? Is there a certain dangerous situation going on? So we've been trying to link it to the different computational algorithmic advertising strategies that we see online. And these are just some examples from a paper I recently wrote. Imagine an individual who wants to order a taxi and gets a higher price targeted at them because of the environment they are in. For example, there is a bad weather or there is certain dangerous weather circumstance going on. Imagine that you can predict, you can infer that someone is suffering from insomnia, and you target the person accordingly with advertising, taking advantage of basically their vulnerable state. Where does the data come in here? Well, we are trying to pick into this algorithm, pick into these black boxes of how this targeting works, trying to combine digital traces of individual with survey data to see who gets targeted with what, so who sees what online, and can we basically see traces of some problematic targeting practices such as vulnerabilities. This is a study we conducted a few years ago, which was the first research we did. And in this research, we actually use tracking data. So we tracked individuals online to see what they are exposed to. We analyzed the data to identify the themes that they are exposed to. And we tried to correlate it with their very basic characteristics that we had available. And we saw some problematic patterns, as we think. For example, people with high trust being targeted or being exposed to a lot of health information or being persuaded towards certain health behaviors, people who perceive being sick, being persuaded with certain health messages. So we saw some first indications of that. What we're trying to do now is to actually ask individuals, hey, can you donate your data to me, for example, from Facebook or Google? We look into that data, we try to identify patterns in that data, and then we try to correlate it with what we know about these individuals, their life situations, their characteristics, to basically peek into that black box of targeting and see what are the problematic practices going on, and can we maybe help the regulators or the society as a whole by identifying them. So that's my data science take on communication science and computational advertising.
We have time for one question. How to donate?
How to donate. we are setting, this is my colleagues are setting the infrastructure up currently. So it is actually like you can ask any big company to get your data, right? This is your GDPR given right. And we're now creating an infrastructure that's supposed to make it easy, that you can basically, we work with panel companies, and then just normal participants of a panel study can very easily go through infrastructure, decide which data specifically they want to donate, which types of data, and that will go on the IVA servers, which are secured, and then we can basically analyze the data from there. So it's supposed to be super easy for anyone in the society, because we want to get to the vulnerable ones, right? Thanks.
Hi. Yes. Can you see? Oh, it's my slide. Hi, so I'm Mark. I'm working as a data scientist or a data analyst in the Green Life Science department. So it's a group of researchers working on plants specifically. I'm working at the SEALS Institute, which is a molecular biology institute. And my pitch is called Data Science Goes Green. Well, because that's a cool title, I found. So why green? Yeah, green matters, right? So because of the fact that plants are producing much of our chemistry. So when you think about molecules and carbons, you probably think about photosynthesis and why plants are so cool. Well, because they can make so many different compounds. So you see sometimes little factories like here, these are called trichomes, but also basically they make a lot of our input. So green chemistry, you can think of that, but you can also think of food, drugs for human health, and so on. Maybe you don't know, but you can also produce vaccine in tobacco, for example, which is also pretty cool. In the Netherlands, it's also very important locally because of the importance of the flower sector and the vegetables. Sometimes 50% of the seeds come from Holland, which is crazy. So it produces a lot of data, actually. And one of the causes is the revolution in sequencing. So a few years ago, sequencing became super cheap. Not this one. So DNA, you could sequence DNA by the hour. And what you get is a lot of data out of it. So when you start to make sense of it, you can start correlating genomes to one another. You can look for patterns in DNA and search for them. The other revolution that is recent is the sensitivity of mass spectrometers, where you can detect molecules. Oh my God, this thing. So what you start to discover is that instead of a plant, you actually have, chemistry plant. And instead of seeing only a few metabolites, you see hundreds and thousands of them. And that comes with complication as well. And finally, we can also have different types of phenotypes. So what we're seeing is, for example, again, never gonna make it. So for example, this is a fungi infecting a plant. Here you have a bacteria, and they're being traced live on time, and you see the development of the infection over time. So you have video inputs, so you have images. You can also have different types of data, like here, where you start to count mini structures on the plant. And that's also comes with its own complexity. Although the data are not as big, the data are more complex in terms of diversity and heterogeneity. So then in my department, what I do is this. I'm getting stuck under all this data set, and my boss comes to me and asks, how's the project going? I want results tomorrow. So that's why when I came into data science or sort of machine learning, because I try to connect the dots of what we measure, so the genes and metabolites, to the phenotypes. And I do that mostly with machine learning. So for example, random forest, where I make trees and try to see how the metabolites are capable of predicting the phenotypes. Yeah, okay, this slide is just on its own. So I want to thank people that supported me. So the Data Science Center, my department, and Data Science Center in general. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go right on to Thomas.
Hello, thank you very much, Paul. So I'm Thomas van Binsbergen, and I'm an assistant professor at the Complex Cyber Infrastructure Group, which is part of the Informatics Institute. And rather than presenting an application of data science, I rather want to essentially make a call for collaborations, which is about how we think that at the Informatics Institute, we can support data science and data management. So we sent a proposal to the Accelerate program of the Data Science Center. Excellent. Yeah, thank you. I should confirm with the screen in front of me, yes. So we submitted a proposal for the Accelerate program, which is for an assistant professor working 2 days a week at the Complex Cyber Infrastructure Group, which is the group headed by Kees de Laat, and also working 2 days a week at the Indie Lab group, which is the group headed by Paul. And of course, part of the Data Science Center. And well, we are looking for collaborations on, as I mentioned, well, developing systems, techniques, methodologies in order to support all activities around data science and data management. So what is going on at the Indie Lab group? Well, designing systems to support people to work with data and working with data from diverse sources. So addressing several of the problems related to data science, as I mentioned. And there's a few topics laid out here that we can go into during network events later. But I want to highlight a particular piece of work in which you as a user can specify quality constraints on your data, which are then automatically checked as part of the data ingestion, which I think is really interesting because it's a way to verify quality about your data as it is being produced and as it is being used. And then at the Complex Cyber Infrastructure Group, we are tackling a diverse range of problems, thinking about systems of various scales, so going from small devices and the applications that run on them, all the way up to data centers and how they are connected on large-scale networks. And here related to data science, we are talking about, we're thinking about the application of domain-specific languages and developing programming environments in which data scientists can, for example, execute, run their data science workflows. And so we're looking into alternative programming environments. And we have some experiments with running data workflows on, for example, high-performance cloud applications. And we are also applying this as part of the Amsterdam Data Exchange project, where the data that is being used as part of your analysis is actually distributed across several organizations, where you, of course, see that things like security and trust come into play, which we want to, we want to increase trust by looking into how we can enforce regulations and contracts as part of the exchange that happens. And of course, yeah, security is an important aspect here as well, which is also being investigated as part of our group. So what I want to takeaway message is we're looking for collaboration. So if you are a data scientist, you run into particular problems which perhaps can be solved by systems, language techniques, feel free to reach out. The same applies to data curators or data managers. So relating to the presentation that Max gave earlier, yeah, we might be able to help on this front. And this assistant professor that we're looking to hire in the short term is available and will actively be looking for these kind of collaborations. So thank you very much.
So how many people are going to collaborate with Thomas? Raise your hand. Oh, look, see, you got some questions. Great. All right. Next up, Tessa.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Tessa. I'm a postdoc researcher at the Psychological Methods Department. And yeah, I will give one example of the work that I did with data science, and it's actually inspired by the coronavirus, which we all know, unfortunately. So beginning of 2020, this new virus popped up, and we knew so little about this virus. And then at some point, I saw this news article that the OVG hospital close by, they launched an app and people could enter their symptoms. And basically the idea was that they would give some sort of signal if they thought that it might be a good idea to see a doctor, or to sort of comfort you and say, well, it's probably not too much going on. And I thought, well, this is a great idea, because everyone wanted to know, what is this virus? Do I have this virus or not? And then on the 8 o'clock news, I saw that actually this was processed, all this incoming data was processed by medical students. And I could imagine that this might be the best way to do it in the beginning, because yeah, we don't have a lot to teach or to train the data on. But at the end, if we know what people entered and they came into the hospital and they either ended up at the ICU or not, then I thought we could do smarter things with this data set. And at the Psychological Methods department, we also thought, is there anything we can do to help out? And together this inspired the Science versus Corona platform that we initiated. And at the start, this mainly involved the Data versus Corona platform. And basically the idea was, we would like to help out. If you have data and you have a question, Corona related, that we might be able to help out using data science techniques, we like to do so. So this was together with Danny Borsboom, Fabian Neblander, and Charlotte Tanes. And actually, I think over the whole coronavirus period, we've seen so many data science applications, and there were so many data models trying to give us all a little bit of insight into what we could expect and what was happening around us. So all these data science projects actually, I think, gave us a lot of insights, but they did not really give us a cure, and especially without the vaccines available still last year, we really needed to alter our behavior. So that's also where the behavioral part came in more. So we developed a framework, the behavioral contact networks, indicators, where the idea was that we would run experiments to alter people's physical distancing behavior, actually to nudge the physical distancing. And then we would compare the contact networks in one situation without the nudge to the contact network in another situation. And then we could say something about what nudges might help and be effective in promoting physical distancing. So we did this at an art fair last year, August, and this year in a supermarket. And together we are still very much working on this line of data science related to the corona. And we also like to extend it beyond corona. So for example, the data consultancy desk that we developed, we might also be able to use it more broadly and set up this consultancy platform. The physical distancing data that we collected at the art fair, we now made available in a database already, and the data that we collected at the supermarket, we still need to make available. So I'll definitely get in touch with all the people here. And we actually use this data now as an inspiration also to do more pedestrian modeling and think about spaces, designing spaces, and more on that. And finally, we're still developing and extending the contact networks to come up with new metrics, different metrics, and maybe also extend this whole this whole sort of package of data science to other things like the climate problems, etc.
All right, thanks. Yeah, my name is Leon van Wissen. I'm a data engineer at the Faculty of Humanities. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of what I do in my work. I assist scholars in their research, of course. And I do this with my colleagues by building virtual research environments. So places for researchers to store their data, to analyze it, to annotate it. And in doing this, we try to comply with the FAIR data standards. So making the research, but also the data, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible. And personally, I like to facilitate or stimulate the use of linked open data in the humanities. For most of my time, I'm based at CREATE, which is the department in media studies, more specifically at the CREATE lab, where we offer these research support services like natural language processing for researchers, doing OCR, HCR extraction on archival documents, working with graphical information systems, and presenting the results of research in a browser, in the interface, for instance. And this is also where we have the Cinema Context website, the Dutch encyclopedia for film culture. And recently we published this data set as linked open data to the web. And this is also the place where we coordinate the Amsterdam Time Machine. And it's not only for data from the humanities, but also social sciences. And we try to bring together these data sets on the history of Amsterdam. It's also part of the European Time Machine. See an example of an address book we OCR'd and analyzed, where you see all the cafe owners in Amsterdam. The faculty also has the Center for Urban Studies, and in which the Freedom of the Streets project is part. In this project, the gender and urban space is analyzed, both in Amsterdam, Edo, Tokyo, and Batavia. And this is done by looking at archival documents again, extracting person names, events, and looking at the location where people worked and where they lived. For instance, by visualizing their mobility patterns. Another project in this department is the pre-modern conflict management project, in which is looked at conflicts from the Northern Europe. And network analysis plays a large role in this, with the help of the NodeGoat tool. Another project, the Healthscaping Urban Europe project, where it's looked at water and waste management, infrastructure management in medieval Ghent and Bologna. And again, a project in which geospatial information is key. Another department in the faculty is the 4D research lab that is making 3D reconstructions over time. They assist in archaeology, for instance, by making models of an excavation site, and they assist in teaching and research assistance. The example you see over here is a 3D reconstruction of Vlooienburg, the place where now the city organization is housed, the Waterlooplein. In the Center for the Studies of the Golden Age, we have the Virtual Interiors Project and the Golden Age Project. They're both looking into the consumption and production of culture in the 16th and 17th century in Amsterdam. The Virtual Interiors makes 3D reconstructions with items they analyze from probate inventories, again, archival sources. And both of these projects contribute to and build upon a semantic web for the Golden Age. Again, linked to open data. And then another department, these are just a few, we have many more, is the Music Cognition Group that is doing interdisciplinary research on what it takes to be musical, humans' capacity for music. They also house the Amsterdam Music Lab. And the final one is the Digital Methods Initiative that is getting more relevant by the day, I think. An example of internet studies in which is looked at the online presence of people, research into social and political issues. And this has also, has already been touched upon in analyzing political tweets, for instance. These were just a few. We have many more, and are willing to collaborate. Thanks.
Thank you. Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Keuchenius. I'm presenting on behalf of the social and behavioral science community. Sorry, I'm going forward, please. Yes. Right, so we are one of the examples of a grassroots initiative mentioned by Paul at the start. So basically this started, me and Javier Garcia, we were both PhD students, me in the sociology department and Javier at the political science department. And there were many interesting seminars organized by our departments, but we somehow missed a little bit some meetings to get in contact with others that are using more computational techniques. For example, maybe using sophisticated network analysis, maybe doing some machine learning, natural language processing. And so we got in contact with each other and we started organizing some events to get others of the other departments also connected. And that was really useful for us. So that's how we started this community. Just want to give one short example of the type of research that, in this case, I was doing. So on Twitter, we look at polarized debates, for example. But what researchers usually do is when they do network analysis, they only look at positive relations between users. And on Twitter, you would use then retweets. So retweets are seen as a positive tie from one person retweeting the other person. But actually, there's a lot of negativity on Twitter, and especially in polarized debate. That's kind of key to look at, right? But it's not being done. And the reason why it's not being done is because there is no simple button on Twitter to express negativity towards someone. If you want to extract the negativity on Twitter, you actually need to look into the text. And that's far more complicated. So that's, for example, a research that I did by annotating manually a bunch of these tweets and seeing whether there was negativity expressed towards another user via a mention sign. And then, bolstering that with machine learning to look at the overall structure. We did this for the Black Pete debate in the Netherlands, most of you know. In this figure, you see green lines are positive references from one user to the other, and red lines are negative references from one user to the other. There are green lines, but because all these users are so close together, mapped into their communities, you barely see them. Yeah. So back to the community. This is just one example of the research that we are doing. The layout got a bit messed up here. But since it is a bottom-up initiative, we're really thinking a lot on what can we do to facilitate connections between researchers in the, not actually only at the social and behavioral faculties, but also with computer scientists, etc. So we're doing, for example, landscape mapping, which is to just create a bit of an overview of all the different institutes that are there and the events that they're organizing that could be relevant for you as a social behavioral computational researcher. And when we organize our own events, we also think a lot about how to get people to connect with one another. So here you see, if you organize a meeting, you can have a topic that is on the one hand deep, so very specific, or very wide thematically. And you have another axis which kind of shows how easy it is for people to create dyadic connections, so one-to-one connections, versus a scale meeting. So a scale meeting would be something like this at this moment, where I'm presenting and all of you are listening, so you have no opportunity to connect one-on-one. And for a successful community, you need a lot of one-to-one connection and a very specific social structure that is not so hierarchical. So we're thinking a lot on how to get that to happen. So we have a website that is actually right now down. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, get in touch. Thanks.
So we are now going to connect to our online pictures, which should be seamless.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for switching to the online pitches. Next up, we have Pim van Ooij. Hello, Pim. Please
Hello.
take the stage.
How are you doing? All right, I'm going to share I'm going to be talking about clinical implementation of artificial intelligence technology in radiology. So I couldn't be there because I worked 2 days in the University Medical Center of Utrecht, which is where I'm right now. But the other days I work in the applied MR physics group in the Amsterdam University Medical Center. And we are working with magnetic resonance imaging. So we have quite a diverse group, about 50-50 men-women ratio. And our mission is to design novel MRI technology for better assessment of disease. So in my case, that means 4D flow MRI. So that is that we can measure blood flow velocities in 3 directions in a volume of interest over time. So I'm doing this for the circle of Willis and intracranial aneurysms, for the carotids, for the thoracic aorta, for the heart, for the abdominal aorta. And what I'm doing here in Utrecht is we try to do a bit of this technique in unborn babies to see if we can find heart disease real early in life. The problem is, to go from raw data to clinically relevant values that doctors can use, we have a pipeline that is labor intensive and time consuming. So we need to make a segmentation, which is manual work, which takes really a long time. And if we want to quantify a clinically relevant parameter, for example, wall shear stress, which is the shear force of the blood flow on the aortic wall in this case, then this calculation can take about 10 minutes or something, which is way too long for clinical practice. And that's why we're looking into AI to accelerate this process. So with a simple unit, we can make a segmentation, but we actually want to dive in a little deeper in a collaboration with the UvA to look at more complex AI to get instantaneous wall shear stress value without the need to make a segmentation and to calculate this parameter. So if we have that, that's great for research, but our goal is that doctors can use this or not even use it. It just needs to be automatically calculated without any user interaction in the clinic. So we have a collaboration with the Data Science Center in which we develop AI systems in research, but implement this in the hospital. So we're doing that using XNet, and we think that we can use cloud solutions where sensible. So currently we're implementing this pipeline in XNet, and we are testing this for a pilot project. And this pilot project is the 4D Flow MRI project that I was just talking about. Once we have that finished, we can extend these pipelines, for example, brain research that we are doing, or research for the heart, carotids, even pancreas for radiotherapeutic, for radiotherapy. And there's many more possibilities in our research group to do this, so that we can obtain the mission that we have to develop technology for the clinic. And that's what we're currently doing. I'd like to acknowledge all the collaborators on this project, and of course the Data Science Center for organizing this day and for giving me the opportunity for this pitch, and of course the audience for their attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pim, for your pitch. Susanne, I would like to invite you for the next pitch.
Hello, I hope that works now. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Susanne Baumgartner, and I'm an assistant professor at the Amsterdam School of Communication Research. And I'm mainly researching the effects of digital media on children and adolescents. So with digital media, we of course mean like smartphones, social media, and I'm looking at the effects on their well-being, on their stress and sleep, and whether smartphones, for example, have an effect on their cognitive development or their academic performance. So to study these effects, for us, it's very important to get objective and good measures of smartphone data, because most of adolescents' digital media use is, of course, on their smartphones. So we have several possibilities. For example, we relied a lot in the past on self-reports, but now we also have tracking apps, for example, that can just objectively track their smartphone behavior. However, one of the limitations of these are that they are only available for Android phones, so not for iPhones. However, most of the teenagers or also our students are iPhone users. Also, if you use a tracking app, you depend on third-party apps, so on third parties, and you have no full control about the data. And also the participants have no control about the kind of data they share, because all the complete smartphone behavior will be tracked. So we looked at a bit of a different approach here that I want to show you briefly. So we had a study which was about smartphone effects on sleep. And in the study, participants participated for 7 days and 7 nights. And we asked them to use the information from their iPhone battery section. So we asked them to upload every morning a short video of their battery section. So it was very easy for them to just screen record the battery section. And here in the battery section, you get information about which apps have been used for how many minutes in which hour of the day. So you get pretty detailed smartphone data. We also asked them to wear wearables to measure their physical activity and their sleep, and they uploaded short surveys every day. So now we got these videos from all the participants, and we wanted to automatize the data collection, so the data analysis part. So we basically wrote a Python script that can transfer the data automatically from these videos to a CSV file. As you can see, you get pretty detailed, all kinds of detailed information about their app usage. And we were also interested in, because we had the 7-day study, and how well they actually complied and whether they changed their smartphone behavior through the course of the study. However, we find that compliance was pretty okay. So we saw that most participants uploaded these videos on 6 or 7 of the 7 days. And of course, there was some decline over the course of the study. But we did not see any changes in their smartphone behavior during the course of the study. So we believe it's kind of a valid approach, and we are now working further on this. If you're interested in using it, let me know, send an email or look for our paper. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Susanne, for your pitch presentation. The next pitch will be from Dick. We found a solution, so that's great. I will share my screen. Do you see the slide?
Yes, I can see it. Yes, yeah. Thank you very much for providing this solution. So my name is Dick ten Hertog. I'm from the Amsterdam Business School. And in fact, we were also very lucky and thanks to Data Science Center, we got a data scientist for this initiative. And the initiative is Analytics for a Better World. So please go to the next slide. So the people that are involved are these people from both the Amsterdam Business School and the Amsterdam School of Economics. In fact, we are now hiring a data scientist. We received many brilliant, excellent submissions, so that's good. And it is in the area of analytics, of business analytics. So keywords here are statistics, optimization, and machine learning. And it's about using data and algorithms to get better decisions. Next slide, please.
Can you see the next slide?
Yes, I can now see the next slide. Yes. So the Analytics for the Better World is an initiative that's taken together with MIT in Boston. And the idea is to apply analytics for the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations. So as you know, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we would like to apply analytics to those applications that really matter, where we have a big impact. For example, we just finished a big project for the World Food Programme, where we applied analytics to optimize the food supply chain. And that's now used in all their operations. And because of these analytics, we can now, World Food Programme can now feed millions more people every year. So in particular, maybe you can go to the next slide. And the next slide, please. I think I skipped this one because of the time. So in particular, what you are doing now, but you know, it is just one example of all the projects that we do. What we are doing now is together with the World Bank, we are now developing models and techniques, analytic models, to optimize the hospital locations in developing countries like Timor-Leste. So Timor-Leste is in a small developing country close to Indonesia. And the World Bank is providing them money to improve the infrastructure, and especially for, let us say, more hospitals, such that more people can access hospitals within, let us say, a few kilometers. So what we built based on a lot of data on the population, the road networks, and so on, we built models to optimize the locations of the hospitals such that, let us say, 95% of the population has access to a hospital within 5 kilometers. So that's now used by the World Bank for the government of Timor-Leste to find good solutions to add more hospitals to this country. And the same is done also now, we're starting with that for Vietnam, to optimize the locations of the stroke centers there, and in Nepal to optimize the test centers for COVID. We're also going now to optimize the infrastructure, the investment for the infrastructure for the roads, and also for adding more schools to this country. So this is just one example, but there are many more. And the data scientists that will be hired will assist us in all of these projects. So the focus is on sustainable development goals and impactful projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick, for your presentation. I think then we can have our last presentation from Frans.
Ah, hey, wow, okay. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So my name is Frans van Kloet, and in my role as a staff support within the Biosystems Data Analysis Group, I'm working on, well, on a daily basis on data analysis, working on tool and method development and data management. But within the DRC, I would really like to focus on how neural networks can be used for understanding biological systems. And when we look at biological systems, we quickly notice that they are vast and complex. So in here, I copied only part of the glycolysis pathway and citric acid cycle pathways. And you already noticed that hundreds of metabolites are into play. And you can imagine that when you want to model such a system, that it's quite a daunting task and not trivial at all. And therefore, our interest was in neural networks, not only because they're a hype, but they've proven to be able to handle many variables. So the one, well, like we have in our case, but using a proper choice of a set of function, activation function, they're able to work with bounded input and output values, which often happen very often in biological data. But also, and that's more important, they can handle non-linear relationships between the input and output variables, and that in comparison to the models that we usually do, or that we generally do. So we hope that this non-linear relationship fitting, that can give us more insight. But even if these relations are not known, they've still proven to be able to model complex systems. So it looks like a neural net would be an ideal solution for us. But of course, we need to deal with a couple of issues first. And those are my goals that I want to tackle within the Data Science Center. And first and foremost, that is how to deal with the low number of samples. And when we measure, usually we have in the order of or magnitude of 100 samples available. But to train a neural net properly, we need at least thousands of these samples. So that's kind of an issue. So therefore, I want to look into transfer learning solutions where you can use a pre-trained network and adapt that to learn a new task using only fewer samples. But I also want to look at ways to incorporate prior knowledge. So things that we already know is true, and can we already fit that into a neural net? So by adjustment of the current weights or adding perhaps extra weights. And secondly, I want to look at the interpretability of the model. And that's, of course, if we want to learn something, if we want to learn some biological, implications, we need to reveal what's really happening inside the black box. So we need to effectively express the output in terms of the inputs, for example, in decision tree-like structure. And if that's not possible, because it's too complex, or they are too entangled, or there are too many interactions, perhaps we can look at ways to simplify models, for example, by smartly grouping neurons that behave similarly, and something like the equivalent of latent variables in a PLS model. So, and with that, I want to end my pitch, but not before I want to mention my colleagues here and within the BDA group, which are Aage Smulder, Huub Hoefsloot, Johan Westerhuis, Anne-Heinz Buschardt, and Roel van der Ploeg. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking very much forward to start and cooperate with the members of the DSC. Thank you.
Thank you, Frans, for the last pitch for today. We're now heading back to the Allard Pearson room.